Welcome to WellPlayed VHS, WellPlayed's film and TV podcast. My name is Zach Jackson. Joining me is James Wood.
Hello.
How are we, sir?
We're here to talk about The Last of Us, aren't we? So,
We are. We are.
how I am is going to depend on that.
So as Mr. Wood said, we are here to discuss The Last of Us Season 2. This will be a full Season 2 review. Now, just as a disclaimer right at the start here, this will be a spoiler cast for both Season 2 and for Part 2, the video game. So if you have not played or watched either of those two things and you want to keep it, keep the surprises there, then do go and do that before you listen to this. And then, please come back and join in on the conversation. So let's get the video hangouts session cracking. James, Last of Us Season 2. What is your overall thoughts on Season 2? Because you reviewed Season 1. Now, I believe you gave it a 7, and that was a pretty generous 7, or
Based on how I felt about it,
or a safe 7, if you want to call it that.
Yeah. And it was also it was pretty distinctly, I think, one of the only critical reviews at the time. That was definitely not the consensus of how people felt about that first season. And it's interesting. I reread that review this morning, and looking back on what I flagged as potential problems for this as an adaptation moving forward and where we've ended up with it, I mean, vindication is really sweet. I kind of think that Last of Us Season 2 is exactly the season that would have followed what Season 1 was already starting to do with this as an adaptation of that video game, and subsequently is definitely not to my liking as a season of television.
Okay, it's interesting that you say you talk about the critical response. Season 2, I believe I've pulled the right number here, but that is sitting on a 95% on Rotten Tomatoes. So once again, this is a critically acclaimed season. The Last of Us, HBO have smashed it out of the park again critically with this. So, and despite my own thoughts and probably your thoughts, that doesn't surprise me. I think, based on the reception of Season 1, this was probably always going to be the case. The longer the season went on, the more I kind of slid, because I was a bit higher on Season 1 than probably you were. But I have slid a little bit. Probably not as far as you, though. I think I probably enjoyed Season 2 more than you did. The first thing I want to call out is this is going to be probably contentious for you and I, because I think we're going to be on separate wavelengths here. But I think Bella Ramsey has done a really, really good job. Maybe the look at times, yes, I think there is the occasional moment where I go, she looks way too young. However, I think her mannerisms, like we'll talk about probably scenes, but like that flashback scene where it's the spaceship thing, even like Joel playing guitar, like the little quips, it's just said in a way that it feels like she's playing Ellie, very, very, very well. And it's really disappointing seeing all the hate and the negative discourse online. It's no one, like, I know that Last of Us is a divisive story, and it's and that just shows the love that people have for this story and these characters, but no one deserves that kind of hate and attention thrown at them. Like, Bella is simply playing a character, and that's what actors do. That's and it's interesting that I don't think there's the level of, and we'll talk about Dina, because I think this show plays Dina a certain way. And it's interesting that Dina hasn't copped, the level of, and I know that Dina's not as a main character as Ellie, but I think there's an obvious, I think there's an obvious reason for that. So
I wonder if we're thinking of the same obvious reason for that.
Well, let's go, James. How did you find Ellie's performance? Bella's performance this season, because obviously we jump 5. I think it's 5 years from memory. We jump 5 years, so and Bella still looks quite young.
Yes.
But how did you feel about Bella's performance this season? Sorry.
I obviously I agree with you. I think that hate campaigns and I think the way that certain corners of the internet generally react to things like casting, and especially once you get like queer people into roles and non-binary people into roles, it amps up. It gets even worse. People of color, especially, like, fuck all of that. 100%. I still think it's a bad performance.
Okay.
And
Okay.
I kind of think it's the central thing that sinks the season for me. I think its adaptation choices are kind of messy, and we'll get into all of that. But the problem with this story is that you need to feel as if you are fully locked in with Ellie as a character, because Ellie is doing some horrendous things here.
Mhm.
And the distance between your empathy at the beginning for her and your kind of like disdain for what she's doing by the end is very muddled in this show because of its adaptation choices, but also because I think that Bella Ramsey's performance is just kind of unfocused and tonally different from scene to scene. I don't feel like there's a consistency to the character in how it's both acted and written. And so I kind of struggle with it as a whole. I think that in season one, the kind of baby faced look was quite good. I think it worked well. It was different from the games, but it worked within the context of what they were doing.
Mm.
And I think here that the 5-year time jump and the much darker material, and also kind of like the increase of like she has a sexual storyline going on now as well. Like, she has adult elements that are meant to be coming into this character. And I maintain, I said this in I think our first VHS discussion about this, I still feel like I'm watching a kid dress
Mm.
up as an adult. And it just breaks it for me.
I agree. Like, there are moments where I go, they just don't look old enough for this moment. Yeah, and there are other moments where I go, like, there's in the finale, that scene where I think it's the finale, or if not the second last one, where Dina is washing Ellie's back, right, which is from the game.
Yep.
Sorry, in the finale, like, even like that, I thought was very well done. But then there are other moments where I think in the season before that, the episode before that, when Ellie is taking out, who's the one with the spores? I forgot the name of the character now.
Oh yeah, I've kind of forgotten everyone's
Yep.
name.
That
But yep.
that character. Like, that moment, like, I was like, it just looks like a. No, you don't look old
Nora.
enough. Nora. I was gonna say Dora, so I
Yes.
was close.
Oh, close.
You don't quite look old. Like, just that, like, there's something there that just doesn't quite. I think it's those more aggressive, more, if you want to say, action focused moments that it does, like, the age or the baby face
It's
does
the
kind of
darkness
stand out.
that
Yeah.
Ellie needs to tap into, right? It's those
Yeah.
moments where like you start, like, Ellie becomes unrecognizable to you because of how far she's going on this quest. And Bella's face is just not able to truly get me over the line. Because I do agree with you. There are moments where, like, I think the performance does lock into what the show is trying to do, and I think it's totally passable. It just doesn't keyly work for me as the piece of this.
Mm. Mm.
And Dina,
And Dina, who's played
so
by
I mean,
Isabella Merced.
Merced, something like that. Yeah,
That's what's in
rings a
the
bell.
doco here, so we'll say that that's correct.
Well, let's
But I
go with
mean,
the doco. Yeah.
the doco's never wrong. But
No.
I thought, as a individual performance,
Mhm.
good. I thought they played Dina, or they wrote Dina, a
Yeah.
very interesting way, because I feel like Dina was a lot smarter, or like Ellie, like when they had those kind of moments, those back and forth moments, Dina seemed to be like the smart one, and
Yeah.
Ellie was kind of like the dumb one. And
Yeah, I think turning Dina into kind of like a fuckboy is an
a
interesting
little bit, yeah.
decision. And you're right. Like, Isabella's performance, I think is pretty good in isolation. I think very, very charming. And to our earlier point about maybe why some of the hate's not been directed this way, I honestly, I just think it's because dudes want to fuck one of them and not the other one.
Absolutely.
Um,
That
and
is
that's
easily,
disgusting.
yeah.
Yeah, but I think it's just the nature of the beast. And that's gross. It's unfortunate. I don't struggle with that performance so as much as I struggle with the writing of that character. I think that they turn her into a mouthpiece for some really clumsy political stuff in the
Okay.
middle of the season when they're talking about sort of the cycles of revenge and sort of the us versus them of it all, kind of a mess. And I also think that Ellie and Dina's relationship being turned from, this before they went out on the quest for revenge, you're supposed to have that scene with them in the weed storage place that's meant to be like
Yeah.
warm. It's their first sex scene. Like it's
Yeah.
got a lot going on there. And so we lost that in this adaptation process. And then along the way, we've also shifted that there's the moment where Dina tells her that she's pregnant, right? And in the game, Ellie reacts like just an absolute piece of shit about it. She's like, "You're a burden now. Why didn't you fucking tell me? I hate this." And in the show, everything about the relationships kind of like had the edges sanded off. It's all
Yeah.
very like, I'm going to be a dad, and everything's kind of a joke between them. It's all very lovey dovey, and I just don't find it as compelling a depiction of a queer romance as I did in the game, because in the game I felt like I was watching two adults deal with
Mm.
something, and in this I feel like I'm watching two internet kids deal with something.
In the game, because great host of a review episode here, but I didn't go back and like do a full rundown on what happened in the game. But did we get that moment where Ellie's kind of like, if you want to come with me, you can. If you don't want to come with me, you go back or something like that, or we can go back, or what it was. Did we get that moment? Because I remember it kind of the way you were like that you were talking about was that Ellie was pissed, but it just kind of felt like, if you want to go, you don't have to come, whatever.
Yeah, like I just watched that scene like this morning, basically, because I went back to try to like refresh myself on how some of those scenes played in the game, and they leave it on a very awkward note of like Ellie's clearly like, if you told me we could have gone back, but you didn't, and now you're a burden, so I'm gonna go. Like, and then they kind of like that's how the scene kind of ends.
Yeah.
And I mean, obviously they kind of mend things up as they go along. They still have an intimate relationship, but those adaptation choices, the condensing of so much of this into a particular window of time, and because the season also chooses to spend a few episodes with them not in a relationship, you do the whole like will they won't they for a while. You do Dina's like maybe I'm bi, I don't know, which like is a totally fine representation conversation. I think the stuff with like her backstory about her parents or her grandmother, whatever it was, totally fine. But that time that you lose developing their relationship impacts those scenes later on where like they should be starting to have fights. Instead, they're doing lovey-dovey shit the whole time. And it just doesn't work.
So you've sort of caught up on the game side more than myself. So I want to throw a question to you, but also I want to get your thoughts on Jesse, who's played by young Mazzano, I think. I thought, now again, I don't recall this from the game, but his at least in the finale or the last two episodes where he kind of comes back after saving them again, he makes a very good point of making Ellie appear to be like the bad guy because of you, like I'm out here because of all this sort of stuff. So I like that scene at the very near the end of, or at least in the middle of the finale, where they kind of have that moment where she goes, that's the aquarium or whatever like that, I'm going to go there. And I thought he was fantastic. Personally, I thought he played Jesse very, very well. And I thought, there were those moments where he was just like, I'm not going to die for this because, which did kind of make you, I think people who haven't played the game would make them be like, hey, Ellie's like, what a bit of a dog. So how much of that is from the game? Did you see any of that? I'm putting you on the spot.
No, I didn't rewatch the Jesse scenes, unfortunately. Like, Jesse's my least favorite part of this story, not because he's bad. Like, I think he's just like, he's a cipher for Ellie and Dina's story. He's kind of a supporting member of that. But yeah, I agree. I think the performance is really good. Again, it's that whole like, and this is something we'll get to when we talk about sort of the show more broadly, but like, it really can't help itself but explicitly state what the conversation they're having is about. The whole like, because you're a good person and I'm a bad person. Like, you can say those things without saying those things. And sometimes the show can do it and sometimes it doesn't. So
what did you make of the death of Jesse? Like, I have not played it. I don't think you've played it since it's come out.
No.
What?
I mean, I played a bit of the remaster, but
okay. But sorry, in full,
Yeah. In full.
and
No.
I still wasn't, and I'd actually kind of forgotten how Jesse dies, like just going through the door. Like I'd forgotten that. That's still that hit me like a little bit,
Good
because
moment.
of it's a very, I think it's a well done moment. But I want to talk about the big dog,
Oh
big
yeah.
big big
Woof
Joel.
woof. Big wolf. Oh, I
Okay,
was
no,
thinking Abby.
well,
Sorry. No, we can go big dog and then we'll go big wolf.
we can go big dog. So what'd you make of Joel was not in it a lot. What did
Yeah.
you? They obviously made a choice here not to do all the flashbacks, so we didn't get that. Now I don't know if it is what you would call the hotel scene, but you know that where I think where they first come to fight a bloater. When Ellie and Joel are kind of they're going through that thing. So they went with the other, which I figured that they would, but I thought maybe that they would do both. But they went with the flashback of Joel taking Ellie out for her birthday, or they went across a couple birthdays there. But I want to ask you, what did you make of the stuff that's been added in? So what did you make of the scenario, the little scene at the beginning of maybe 5 or 6? I think it was 6 actually, with Tony Dalton playing as Joel's dad, the cop.
Oh, fuck! I forgot about that scene.
Yeah.
Yeah,
obviously it's got that line.
I kind of hate it.
Okay. Okay.
Okay. So, here's the problem. In isolation, right? I think that it is a totally well acted scene. My issue with a lot of the additions that they've made to The Last of Us Part 2 as a story is that like that scene does exactly what I was worried season 1 was already doing, which is like recontextualizing Joel as more of a like victim of a cycle as opposed to a perpetrator of that cycle that goes on to make Ellie the victim of it.
Yeah.
And I think these subtle choices to reframe Joel as more sympathetic and a victim in his own right just undermine the emotional power of this story. And I think that it goes a long way. Like when you get, Neil Druckmann out here now talking about how kind of like Joel was right. The ambiguity is lost. And it was in the ambiguity that Last of Us was what it was because you brought to it what you brought to it. And I think people had such different reactions to it because of that. That's good art. The scene with his dad kind of being about like this abusive parent and the line about I'm trying to do better than mine, and one day when you have a kid you'll try to do better, also ties in with the Dina pregnancy stuff where the pregnancy turns from a burden to Ellie as she was in the game into a I'm going to be a dad moment for Ellie in the show. And it's those little choices along the way that just subtly but poorly reframe for me the emotional through line of the game.
Because I think I think it's pretty clear. Like they use that because at the end of I keep saying season. At the end of episode 6, we get that moment on the porch, which is from actually the end
moment
from the end of the game, right? Like
very
is it the very end or is it the moment?
It might be before the epilogue.
Yeah. Okay, well it's one of those. But I was surprised, and I think from a safe TV point of view, I thought it was a nice little tie-in, like that little thing. I hope you do a little bit better than me. But I was surprised that they went with that a little bit early. I do think maybe they needed to just for the TV show, like because there needed to be some kind of context around why Ellie is so upset. Like I know it's probably it's probably quite obvious because she's just watched old mate get his head beaten in, but they were not on good terms. So I think you kind of needed to show the viewer that they were like she was open to trying. And it's interesting because that's again like in the game, the moment that Ellie finds out that she's been lied to is completely different. It doesn't happen on that porch. Do you recall from the game? Yeah. So obviously,
I do.
So if you've only watched the show and you haven't played the game, you don't give a fuck about the game. Ellie basically fucks off and goes back to Seattle. No, not Seattle. Is it Seattle?
Oh, anyway, the Fireflies campus.
Yeah,
right?
She goes back to like the hospital and she finds a recording, which essentially says that they can get a cure. And then she confronts and then Joel's obviously followed her, and then she confronts Joel, and that's where Joel basically tells her the truth because she does say that if you lie to me, like I'm gone, basically.
Yeah.
All right, now just back on Joel. What do we make of the moment with Gail's wife? Gail's husband.
Yep. Which we
Fuck,
should
what's his name?
say, the scene with Gail's husband replaces the flashback we were just talking about, where Joel confesses what
Okay,
happens.
right.
Because they come at a similar time where it's kind of like the point of that flashback is for Ellie
Oh,
to establish that like
Yeah.
Joel's word means nothing,
Yeah.
which then triggers the
Yeah.
porch conversation, which is itself a pairing of both of two different flashbacks that they've kind of stitched together. But we'll get to that. I again, I just kind of it's if you're going to adapt this thing and you're going to make changes to it to better suit television and whatnot, this is one of those changes that I don't think adds anything. It's just different for the sake of being different. And so I'm a little, I'm just left a little bit like, why is this a thing in the show? And although I did like the dude's performance, I'll say that. Gail's husband, good stuff. Really enjoyed him.
If you don't know who that is, it's old mate from The Matrix.
It is like with the steak.
Yeah,
there you go. I just saw him in Sense8 last night, by the way. I started that.
Yeah,
so
right.
There you
Okay.
go.
There you go.
Anyway,
we don't know his name, but he's Cypher from The Matrix.
He's something Pants.
Yeah, Joey Pants.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Joey Pants. Good old Joey Pants. Yeah. Yeah, I don't know. Like it's a fine scene on its own. I don't know why it had to replace the other one, given that then they cram that other one into the porch scene, which needed to be its own thing for the sake of the emotional clarity of it all. It starts getting a little messy for me.
And what did you make of the whole birthday stuff? And what did you make of the flashback? Because it's obviously told somewhat differently.
With the museum?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, it's interesting because there's a lot of stuff that the show does that is ripped straight from the game, whether it's like lines or framing or whatever. But because I don't gel with how the show is presenting these things, I find them a little hacky. And then I go back and watch them in the game and I'm like, this is kind of beautiful. And it speaks to me like that's why casting is so important. It's why, camera work is so important. It's why a sense of, air in the room matters on how these things are presented. And like we were talking about, what's the guy's name? Dina's ex.
Jesse.
Already forgotten. Jesse's death. I just rewatched it from the game, and it's gory and harrowing and very quick. And in the show, I find it less effective just because the camera work is slightly different. And I haven't seen anything done in the show that wasn't filmed better in the game, and that's interesting. You can just agree or disagree. I'm not saying I'm definitive on that. It's just an interesting
thing for me. I don't recall the game enough to have an opinion on that. So I mean Joel, or should we say Pedro, does a great job. I think he does Joel very, very well. Shows that he cares. It is because this stuff is not from the game. Correct me if I'm wrong, but we don't obviously get these birthday kind of moments. Him getting the cake and.
Oh yeah.
I think we get the guitar moment.
The cake scene, just super quickly. Oh, what the fuck was that? Why did she do
which one?
Nom 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 nom?
Oh, yeah. Well, I don't know. That was odd. I think it's just to show that she's a kid. I don't know.
Yeah, it's so interesting because we're like, she doesn't look old enough to play adult Ellie, but now she looks too old to play kid Ellie. So you can't have her running around like, gee willikers, Joel.
Yes, and
sorry.
No. But what did you make of the scene where obviously the not disagreement, what's the word? The tension between Joel and Ellie starts. So when Joel comes home with a cake one day and obviously catches catches Ellie with maybe Sarah.
Oh.
And she was getting tattooed and stuff like that.
That's right. Yeah, we haven't even talked about Joel's reaction to her homosexuality. What the fuck are we doing?
So now, purely television related, I liked it.
Okay.
from a TV point of view, obviously, like
Yep.
that's not the appropriate reaction. But I thought that, but I thought that that felt like Joel. Like, do you know what I mean? Like that was an authentic. I thought
Right.
anyway. Correct me if I'm wrong.
Okay.
Tell me how you felt.
No, I just like. So here's the problem with this adaptation of Joel, right? Is that you take like this white Midwestern dude who I could see being a touch of the homophobic. I could see that in his DNA from the game, right? And this Joel is no longer a white guy, which fundamentally changes a lot of the makeup, I think, of his lived experience, right? And so then when he has an additional layer of even casual bigotry, I'm like, what is this adding to the text? What am I supposed to take away from the fact that you've suddenly decided to make Joel have a weird reaction to Ellie being into girls? Because it never comes up again, like other than him being like, I shouldn't have reacted that way. It's like, well, then why did you in the first place? What is this?
I think for me, it just it showed that there was just that tension, and it was like a boil over. Like,
Right.
and I think he is because he never got that chance to have a teenager with
Mhm.
his daughter. I hope I've forgotten Sarah. Is it Sarah?
I was just Sarah. Yeah.
And I think he's doing this for the first time. That's why I thought it was in some way like an authentic. And I don't think
Mhm.
because I think he realizes after that he's fucked up.
Yeah.
And because then later on in the different episodes, he talks about with Dina, like he goes, oh, well, so you like it kind of thing. So I think he's accepted it, but I think it just showed that they were on two different wavelengths, like because she was like and it's not a fucking experiment, like kind of thing.
Yeah.
So I just I thought it was it was not like a nice moment, but like
No.
between like
I
a
get
parent
it.
and
But it
like a
was
teenager.
also,
Yeah.
yes. I also feel like, for as much as I don't like it, I think it was one of the few moments that felt like genuine drama between the two of them.
Well,
And so
that's kind
I,
of what
I
I
do
mean.
appreciate that. Yeah.
Because then it kind of, and then he was just like, okay, well, if you want to move out to the garage, like give me a couple of days and I'll sort it out.
Yeah.
So, all right, Abby, talk to me about Abby because
Sorry, I gotta stop doing that. Big Wolf.
Actually, can we before we go to Abby, let's talk about the wolves or the wolves. Wolf.
The WDF.
How did you make of? Sorry, not how. What did you make of Isaac and how that kind of thing, that whole moment went down? I was very. I didn't quite understand what was going on. Like,
no, okay. This is very thorny to talk about, because of Druckmann's views on things. So let's say that a show based on a text from a man who has maybe some of those views, presenting us with a sort of organized militia organization and a let's say regressive cultish othered people, and initially being like, oh well, the wolves are doing some pretty fucked up things, like there's that torture scene with Isaac with the hot pan and stuff, and we see a couple of it was fucked up, and we see a couple of times where the wolves are like hunting them down and whatnot. And I think showing those scenes, but then specifically contrasting them with like what are they, the Sephirotes, is that what they're called?
Yeah, the scars. I think they're the same. They're the
Scars,
same, right?
something like that. Yeah.
Well, I think they're called the Sephirotes, but ones with the
showing them and having lines about like they are worse though. And while you've also got Dina walking around talking about the idea of an eye for an eye and cycles of vengeance being justified, and I think it paints a really bad image. And I think there's been a lot written about sort of The Last of Us Part 2, the video games politics from Druckmann. And I think that is there if you read into it there. And I think that's a really interesting way of engaging with the game. I think it is even more on the surface with the show though. And I find that, bad, let's say.
But that scene though was just, I don't know, like because we don't get that level of introduction with Isaac in the game, like right, like he's just kind of there,
no.
right.
It's a new scene.
But even like that, and the way that young kid like turns, like he's obviously Isaac obviously knows that this young kid is not part of whatever, why he's killing. I don't really quite understand why he's killing the other people. Is it because they're Fedra? Like I don't really
like his own soldiers in that truck or whatever.
I never.
I think it was like a Fedra thing.
That's what I've figured, right? But so but like, why wouldn't you just be like, come join the wolves?
Because the show needs to justify its runtime. You got to add cool scenes and.
So anyway, yeah, like I thought that moment was a little bit odd. Like I just didn't quite understand, and then to let the kid go, and then the kid to kind of, I know this whole thing's about like the morals and whatever, but he kind of towards the end of the show, because in that I think it's the last episode when Ellie and Jesse are going to find Tommy, I think, and they have that moment in the car park. I think he's the kid, right? Or he's the soldier from.
Oh, is he?
Wolves.
Okay,
I'm pretty sure. And then they get that scar or the Sephirite, and they take him away and kill him. Anyway, Caitlin Deva. Sorry,
Caitlin Deva.
Yeah. Abby, what'd you think?
I had this conversation with my partner last night, actually, because I was like, oh, Caitlin Dever is actually like pretty good in the finale, and he was like, is she pretty good or is she pretty good in a bad show? I was like, that's the question now.
Okay.
I think it is. Other than Pedro Pascal, I think it's the best performance in the show. I think Caitlin is a very talented actress, and I think that she is doing her best with what she's been given here. The physicality of the casting, we talked about this in our first episode on this as well, but like, Bella looks too young, Caitlin is too small. And it's not a matter of like, feminine body types needing to be a certain way. If anything, it's an argument against that, in that Abby looked a certain way, and that in and of itself was interesting. It was commentary. It look at the reaction it created. Like there was this discourse forever about she's secretly a trans character. Like it was horrific what happened because they decided to depict a woman being having musculature. And so like Caitlin Dever being this like little twink, I don't really know what we're doing here, even though I liked the performance.
Do you think that perhaps that was done deliberately to protect Caitlin or whoever was the actor from backlash? I would hate that the answer is yes, but maybe I think that there's a little bit of thinking, maybe. But then again, it's like, well, they've casted Bella Ramsey, so obviously.
Yeah. Well, that's it. I wonder if that's giving the show too much credit, because I think that it in of itself has made enough choices to sand all of those edges off of these characters anyway. Like the fact that we're introduced to Abby's motivations from the beginning, to me, is like, it doesn't matter who they cast in that, they were already trying to preemptively get ahead of maybe whatever the reaction could have been. Have you heard of an actress called Katie O'Brien?
No, but let me have a look. I will say, I think we talked about it in the first one we did of these, but that was probably one moment that I didn't quite like. I didn't like how they openly were like, this is why. Like you knew before the show really even got going that this is why. I'm looking at her. Yep.
Have you recognized her from anything, or?
Okay, I haven't looked that deep. I got two Katie O'Briens. How do you spell it?
Katy.
Okay, so I'm looking at the wrong Katie. That would probably not help.
Hell yeah, let's go. For those playing along at home, this is an actrris, I guess, most popularly from The Mandalorian. She played the kind of like reformed Nazi who wasn't actually reformed. She's also in Love Lies Bleeding, which is
in Twisters, baby.
Yeah, big Twisters. Yeah. Katie O'Brien is a phenomenal actress. Katie O'Brien also has the exact physique of Abby. She's a big, strong woman. And like I look at that and I go like, there's no reason why we couldn't have been casting a bigger woman here. Like you can say like she's maybe too old. She's a very young face. Who gives a shit?
Mm-hmm.
Get interesting with it. So I don't know. Like I kind of find Abby a bit like deflated because of the
Sure.
physical presence not being quite the same way that it was, and also like we were talking about earlier, as an adaptation, front loading that motivation ruins how you're supposed to feel about Abby. I rewatched the beginning of the game, and like Abby and her friends before the Joel killing scene happens,
Mm.
they're just friends. Like
Yeah.
they are reasonable people interacting, having little interpersonal dramas. There's implications of relationships. They are people. And in the show, they're introduced as monologuing villains.
Mm.
And it has a disastrous effect on everything. And so when they still choose at the end of the season to go with the structure of part 2 of the game by being like, we're restarting Seattle day 1, but from Abby's perspective
Yeah.
now, it lands like a wet fart for me because she's not been built up as anything other than like this kind of cartoonish monologuing villain. And
Yeah.
I don't know.
Just on that, I was going to ask you a bit later on. Did you expect the end where we got the end?
No, I thought we were going to cut to credits with the "you wasted it" gunshot cut to credits. And then when it comes back next season, they would start from Abby's point of view as a way
Sure.
of being like
Mm.
subvertive and subversive and whatnot. Yeah.
I I thought we'd get, but to be fair, I don't remember the exact moment this is. So this might be actually in Abby's playthrough. So this might be why this is like way off the mark. But I thought it was going to be the moment where Abby and Dina, or so where Abby's about to kill Dina.
Oh, right. Okay.
Because I
Yeah.
thought that
Yep.
was around that time period, and obviously I don't think it is, or maybe I don't recall. So
It's sort of similar.
so I
But
thought that might.
yeah.
I thought that might have been the moment because obviously in the show we get that, which I want to talk about that in a sec. But we get the moment where Ellie kills the pregnant woman. God, we needed to really don't have the name of the people,
Yes.
do we?
We should have had a doc.
Mel. I was going to say Mel,
Mel.
but yeah, trust the doc. The doc's in the wrong. Yeah, so we get Mel who's pregnant, and so I thought that would have been a good spot. I thought that was where it was going to end, where we have that potential is
Right.
Abby going to kill.
Yeah.
And that was only a conclusion I came to while watching the show. But yeah, interesting. But let's talk about that last finale. How did you feel about the random fucking throw in of Ellie going to the island?
What was that?
No.
Okay. So when yeah, okay.
Yeah, well, I was like,
Okay.
what is this? Why? And then fucking 2 minutes later, she's
back. Yeah. I was really concerned that we were about to do the Abby getting hung scene, but they were going to start remixing things basically.
That's what I thought.
Which at least would have been interesting. Yeah, I don't know, because like, she gets in the boat and then she's got this like, oh, the waves are coming, and she gets thrown out of the boat. And when she gets thrown out of the boat, she's close to the aquarium, wakes up on the island, which is on the other fucking side of the fucking cove.
Yes.
With the boat perfectly parked next to her, walks onto the island, almost gets hung up. Someone's like, oh, the village is on fire. They fuck off. She gets back in the boat and she goes back to the aquarium. What was the point of the scene other than to have someone say the village is on fire? Like,
well, the only thing I can think, well, not the only thing, but one of the things I remember that scene in the game where you have that kind of, what's the right word I'm looking for, set piece where you are going through, you're in the arcade. I think you're Ellie. I think that's the moment when you're going to the aquarium. I think. Don't quote me on that. But you have that kind of set piece where you're going, the water fucking falls apart and you're going through the water. I was like, maybe that's a replacement for that. Like, but also why? And even like, if the Seraphites are so fucking badass, why did they just be like, let her go? Like, why wouldn't they just cut her and
just shoot her?
Yeah, or like cut her, like cut her guts and let her die on the ground. Like you could have had that scene, or you could have had that thing from the distance where I think Ellie gets to the dock or wherever she gets to, and then the island kind of blows up or whatever it is. Well, no, sorry, that might be as she's going away, but you could have just had that in the distance, like.
Got to pad that runtime, bro.
I just don't. That was I was like, what, like, what? And then
Yeah.
because then I genuinely did think that the Abby getting hung scene was actually Ellie in the game. So did go back and look at that, and I
Right.
found out that it was Abby, because that's why I was
Well,
like,
yeah.
that's why they're obviously doing it, because it's got to be.
Yeah.
But
Well,
it wasn't.
that's from memory. That's also the scene that has like that like iconic shot of Abby where she's like got the hammer, right, and she's in the rain, and she's just looking like a tower of a person.
So
Yeah.
I'll tell you who I think. Well, if you had Caitlin Dever's face and her acting ability, and you put it on Ronda Rousey, do you know who Ronda Rousey is?
I do know who Ronda Rousey is. Yeah.
I was like, there's your build. Like, there's your,
Yeah.
you know,
It's a little face mapping. Yeah, it's fine.
But yeah, just and again on the Seraphites, you know, that scene in episode 6 towards the kind of the end. What do you make of that? Where, and that's where, you know, Ellie then obviously, because they get, I think they're in the garage or something like that, and there's all those little what are they called? Not fucking. I got the run thing up here, but no, maybe
I have
it's
no
not,
idea what scene
maybe,
you're talking about.
No, sorry, it might not be episode 6. It's where Jesse comes and saves them.
Oh yeah, okay, yeah. When they're getting attacked.
Correct, and then she fucks off and goes and kills Nora. Because in the game, I think that's the scene where you kind of sneak through the foresty bit or the park or whatever the
like
fuck
a park
it is.
or something. Yeah.
Thoughts on that part of the game? Well, adaptation.
I mean, that's kind of my problem with like there's like a good middle to end chunk of this as a TV show. Sorry,
Stalkers is so the Stalkers are the enemies. Remember, they're in that warehouse, and
like the smart ones or whatever.
Yeah.
Hey, remember when the show had zombies in it?
Well, that was one question I was going to ask you. Like, do you find that people are just walking around having a chat? It's all fucking good.
Pretty chill. Yeah.
There's not even like the odd zombie to take out.
No. Yeah.
Like apart
it's
from,
weird, isn't it?
It is a bit weird. And I know that.
What did you? Oh, sorry.
I was going to say, I think if you have them too much, they kind of become a little bit comical because they're so easy to take out. However, because obviously in the game, it's obviously a lot harder because you've got to manage your resources and stuff like that. But in the, you know, we don't in the show, you don't have the luxury of respawning, right, and restarting after dying. So you kind of gotta. I get it from that point of view, but it's like there's this fucking warfare going on in this park. There's all this other shit going on. Like, where's all the fucking zombies?
Clickers.
Like, yes, we got the underground scene where all the clickers were in that kind of train stationy thing. The other no, sorry, you had a question? Shoot.
Well, I was going to say, speaking of clickers and maybe an overuse of them, what did you think of the added battle of fucking winter or whatever was going on at Jackson when they did that big extended clicker invasion?
Good for TV.
Well, that's it. Like, is it just there for the spectacle of it? Because I don't know what it actually added to things.
Well, on that, remember in that episode, and then the guy comes and goes. They're knocking over the pipes, and he obviously sees the cordyceps or whatever the fuck it is.
Yeah.
And he runs to go and tell Tommy. What happened to that?
Who knows? Yeah.
It was interesting. I don't.
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't know if they've said why they've added that in, but I wouldn't have gone with that personally. It makes it not gimmicky, but it makes it feel like, I don't know. I think we had this chat when we had that episode last season where they all break out of the ground, and it's like this is not The Last of Us. You don't have these like huge, like, this is not Days Gone. Like, you know what I mean?
Yeah, exactly.
Like Days Gone have the big hordes and things like that, and I just don't know what the point was to have all these zombies or infected to then have none.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, were they all
Agree.
just in fucking Jackson? Like, like,
Yeah.
because you're talking about these things getting smarter. These things are, they're playing dead or whatever they fucking were doing in
Mm.
the snow, and then we don't see them again.
Yeah. Yeah.
Uh,
It's full of odd choices.
mm, mm.
That's why,
Right,
like, I kind of wonder. Sorry.
No, keep going.
No, I stuck with this because, I mean, this is what we do, and also because I love the game. What does a regular viewer do with this as a TV show? Because I don't think this is like a satisfying season of television as just a viewing experience.
So Anna has not played the game. We've played parts of
Right.
it, but we have not sat through the whole thing, and she likes it.
Okay. All right.
Now, this is the person I just got engaged to, by the way. So she is now my fiance. So she's probably going to hate me for saying this. How do I say this nice without getting like dumped?
Yep.
She's the average viewer.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Right? She's someone who just tunes in on a Monday or whenever this show goes live, watches it, has a good time. We're done. She has no connection to the characters, to the universe, to the story, other than like loosely playing the first one with me and playing a little bit of the second one. Like, she doesn't have that level of care. So I think it's like watching anything that you just watching. Like, you either like it or you don't. And I think this is for an average viewer. This is good. This is, if you're watching this as a thing, it's big budget. It's got big name actors. It's well produced. Like, like the CGI is much better, I think, than last time. But again, we had a rougher version.
We did.
But I think it's like going to watch Gladiator 2. You want, like, every now and again, you want to go and watch a big budget Hollywood film.
Yep.
It doesn't particularly have to be like the best thing you've ever seen, but you're glad that you've gone and, that we still get this. And I feel like this is that.
Yeah, that makes sense.
I don't think she thinks it's the fucking best thing that she's ever seen. I think it's more the thing that's something that we watched together that also makes it a bit better. Because in terms of apocalypse sort of stuff, she doesn't really care. She doesn't really want to watch that stuff because there's, but my question to you, they talked about prior to the show that I think they mentioned that the Spores would be making a return. Tell me about that.
Did they?
They were there in that one scene.
Oh, with Nora in the basement?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. And not only did that scene just kind of feel, sure, okay, but Ellie didn't even mention it to anyone. So this whole thing before of being like, you got to watch out for spores, blah, 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 blah. But then in the show, we get this moment where, yes, Ellie's on a bit of a rampage and, she does what she does. But then, it's not like, oh, hey, and by the way, FYI, spores make people infected.
Yeah.
I feel like that's like pretty big news.
Well, it's kind of like what we're talking about with the clickers as well, being so like kind of de-emphasized. Like all the danger feels like it's just kind of been sucked out of it a little bit.
So I found that was like, sure.
A bit of a whatever. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
Alrighty. Got anything else for me to ask? Wait, to ask me?
I
just want to talk about?
Quick closing thoughts. Gale, I think, is the biggest kind of like new addition to the makeup of this. And I remember flagging in that pilot episode being like, does Catherine O'Hara just exist in this show to spell out what the show is about to different characters every week? And that's kind of exactly what she goes on to do. And I just think it's interesting that like that's a really talented actress who I think I remember saying this at the time, like, as an addition during an adaptation, I think it could have been an interesting choice to have a character who is like wholly new, who changes the kind of makeup of some of these scenes. And I think she has really good chemistry with Pedro Pascal. But I still ultimately like that character seemed to just exist so that the audience could have someone kind of gently guide them through the thematic through points. Rough.
Well, I think that's a good point because I think that there's a very, very good example, and that's when Joel goes to her to ask about the moth.
Yep.
and he's
Oh,
like,
yeah, right. Yep. Yep.
what does a moth mean?
Do you interpret dreams?
Yeah, and she's like, backhand, like that's for the dumb doctors, like basically.
Mhm. Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
and he's like, so is like moths like growing and stuff. Um, she's like, no, it's death, and
Yeah.
then she's just like, why? And then he just fucks off, like.
Yeah. Yeah.
So yes, I agree. I think, yeah, I think her character needed background because of that moment where we find out that Joel is, well, sorry, Ellie. We use that scene that Ellie discovers that Joel was obviously lied to her.
Yep.
Because at the start it was Manny. No, whoever the husband was, I can't remember his name in the show.
Yep. Yeah.
But
Eugene.
Eugene. Sorry, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Mm.
Mm.
Yep.
It's So, all right. Any other changes from the games that you want to from the game that you want to talk about? I'm trying to think if there's anything major else that we.
Yeah, I kind of feel like we hit most of the big ones.
Oh, the other thing I wanted to add. Sorry.
Yeah.
It was just about we talked about Joel and his reaction to Ellie saying that. But I also think that gives a little bit of context behind Joel's reaction to when Seth makes a slur at the very start.
Right. Yeah. What did
No, go.
because
Yeah.
there's multiple scenes with Seth,
Yeah.
and they are all geared around like Seth's actually not such a bad guy, and I think that's really fucking weird to do that with the homophobic slur guy.
I think he did. Well, I don't think, but he says he had too much to drink, blah blah blah. But I made you some sandwiches. It's all good.
But the framing of that scene is specifically like I forget the name of the Joel's brother's wife who kind of like leads the
Maria?
community. Yeah, well, whatever.
Sure.
She kind of like put some shit onto Ellie for being like, can you like forgive him or can you at least get along with him kind of thing. And then we go from that scene into the one where he shows up when Dina and Ellie are about to leave, being like, actually, you should do this. I'm trying to help you get those sons of bitches and whatnot. And I can't tell if the show is like trying to be like, look at Ellie's slippery slope aligning herself with a bigot just because he agrees with her about revenge. I don't think the show's smart enough to have been doing that. I don't fully understand why we're meant to be spending so much additional time with this guy who just exists as a one scene thing in the game, as like a quick shock kind of moment, you know?
I wonder if they have made him safe, like a bit like they've sanded off the edges of him as well, being like, okay, yeah, and he said that thing, but he apologized. He said it was the booze, and he's made up for it. And he's actually not that bad. He was a cop beforehand, you know that. He makes cakes, like.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's odd.
Just a quick scroll. The moment where she kills Owen and Mel, that I feel like that was very like crammed, very like we've got to get to the end, bro. Like
so much longer than it is in the game. Wildly longer.
Not that scene, that one scene, but that sequence, if you want to call it that.
Right.
It was just like she's toppled off the fucking boat. She's been hung. She's on the boat again. She's in there. They're dead.
Yeah, right. Just clipping through. Yeah.
It was just very like, I don't know. Very quick.
How did you feel about because in the game, she stabs Nora in the neck. Realizes that she's pregnant and it has like a whoa, holy fuck kind of moment, and then she gets quickly shuffled out of the room by the guys, and so things kind of progress from there. The addition of having are you going to perform a C-section to get the baby out? I was like, whoa, what is happening here?
Sure. Well, I think that was because obviously Ellie in that scene with Jesse in the car park, she was like, he's a child.
Yeah.
She wanted to save him. So I think, again, it's that whole let's make it a little bit softer. Let's make
Yeah,
you
yeah.
know
Like really make sure that we're like telegraphing what
you
this
know
is. Kind
she
of.
wanted to
Yeah.
save him, save the baby, but she was in too much shock. And then old mate
Yeah.
died. So, but surely at
Mhm.
that point you'd just be like, fuck it, like this bitch is dead. I mean, sorry, this lady's dead. This lady's
Jesus
dead.
Christ.
I'm just, I'm being Ellie. She's dead.
Yeah.
Let's
Oh,
just
yeah. Okay. Okay.
let's just cut the
Yes.
baby out.
Get it. Yeah. 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 Weird. Very weird scene. Just a series of weird scenes.
Yeah. All right. Overall, actually, quickly, what do you think of sets, CGI, production, that sort of jazz? I thought it looked great. Okay. That like a reaction.
No, I think it looks overproduced at times.
That's fair.
Yeah, like there are a lot of shots where so like the Take on Me Ellie acoustic guitar moment in the shop. In the game, it's just kind of like a room that has some overgrowth in it. In the show, it's this like picturesque ray traced little spot in the sun. And I don't know why we're making those choices. And similarly, I think like the room where Joel gets killed in the game feels cold and weird and very kind of closed in.
Yeah.
In the show, it's just a big nothing. It just makes it makes a lot of choices that I just don't like.
I do agree with that. I think the Joel to not die in the basement, where he was.
It wasn't a basement. It was still the top floor.
Was it?
There was still big windows and everything. But
No,
like,
are you sure?
Key. Yeah, I just watched it. Like really key differences in lighting and framing that change the feel of the room.
I thought it was downstairs, but there you go. See, like I said, I haven't watched it. I did like the shotgun blast though.
It's always fun.
That was impactful.
Yeah. I love the way they do it in the game though. Like because like you get this kind of like room full of people that Joel's standing in the middle of, being like, oh, and I'm Joel. And the way the tension in the room shifts immediately, and you don't really get that in the show. And then like from off screen, Abby walks up, is like, because they know who you are, bang, shoots him in the leg. It's so shocking and impactful. And the show is just a bit.
Well, because we don't have Tommy in the room. Remember that?
Exactly. And we also know why they're there. We know that they already hate Joel. We know that they're there to kill Joel. It changes the makeup of these moments.
I do think maybe if you're a viewer and you watch that last episode, then you see this first couple of episodes, I think you kind of put it together.
Yeah.
Whereas we didn't, at least I feel like I didn't know. I had an idea. Yeah. But you didn't know why. Sorry, is what I'm saying. You didn't know exactly why. It wasn't because the father the doctor is Abby's father. Like you didn't know that, but I feel like you have more of an idea if you watch the show, perhaps.
Yeah, you get like one throwaway line at the beginning of the game where they're like they're looking at Jackson like, oh, we could try to figure out where he is or whatever, or we can get him to come out. And that's kind of all you really get at the beginning of the game. And so you're like, well, they've obviously come here to do something. It's probably to Joel, but he's not going to die because he's the main character. And so it works as that. And I get that we're in a different landscape now. It just doesn't, I don't know.
There was a little part of me that thought they would drag out Joel's death. Not drag it out in the sense, but he wouldn't die in the first 2 episodes. But I think he had to.
Yep.
I think so.
Yeah.
All right. So, give me a final thought and a score. Give me a score on that bad boy.
Final thought. I posted about this earlier on Blue Sky, but like I think as an adaptation, it's quite bad. And I think as a standalone TV show, it is just kind of boring. And it doesn't really work on any level for me. If I had to score this, I would probably give it 4.5.
Wow.
I don't think this is a functional season of television.
Okay.
And even if we discard the adaptation stuff, which I obviously can't, but like it doesn't work. And I think it's not well acted, and I think it's really badly written.
Okay.
So
all right.
Yeah.
Cop that. For me, I'd probably go about a 6 to 6.5. I
Okay.
enjoyed watching it,
Mhm.
but the more I watched, the more I was like, and I do get the boring thing. Like I think there were episodes where I was like what is? There's nothing is happening,
Yeah.
and the things that
Mhm.
like there's no zombies, there's no excitement. It's just, and I know that in the game, that is a thing. It's about the dialogue, it's
Mm.
about the bond, it's about the journey, blah blah blah. But I think as a TV show, you
Yeah.
kind of need a little bit more going on.
Well, it's like the game is like a slow contemplative experience at times, but it's also punctuated that with periods where you are at least engaging with stuff mechanically. You're doing the
Yeah,
crafting, you're doing the collecting, you're doing the
yeah,
sneaking. And so through those quiet moments, you get time to sit and think about what's just happened.
mm,
And the show doesn't have any of that space. It's like I think a lot of things are like, people are talking about we're in this like golden age of video game adaptations. I disagree because I think we're adapting things that don't work in other mediums instead of
mm,
taking stories and changing them or whatever. Like The Last of Us Part 2, its mechanical elements are crucial to its success as a story.
yeah,
And I think removing your control of Abby, removing your control of Ellie, and removing the downtime, I think you get left with like just a pretty stock standard HBO nothing burger.
yeah. I am. I mean, of course, like curious to see how season 3. Well, apparently, old
3
mate,
and 4.
yeah, big old Craigie boy said there's going to be season 4, which is just like, so are we going to
What
have
are
the
we doing?
same? Are we going to have the same thing with season 3? Like it's just going to be drawn
Mm,
out. And I do think part of my negatives on it is because I've played the game,
mm.
right? I think
Yeah.
again, if you're
Yeah.
coming from someone who hasn't played it, I think you would enjoy this. I think this is probably 7 or an 8, maybe.
Mhm.
But as someone who has played the game, and I hear there's going to be 4 seasons, I'm like,
Mate.
why?
Yeah.
Like, just
Yeah.
make season 3 and make the episodes like, I don't know, fucking make them movies. I don't know, make them 70 minutes. I
Yeah.
mean, you probably
Yeah.
can't do that, but um,
But just shake it up. Try something. But
yeah,
so what we do, like season 3 is Abby, and then season 4 is Santa Monica.
it
Like,
must be like that's how. So we're not going to get a conclusion for
what, 10 years?
yeah. So
Yeah.
and that makes me wonder what the future is for the game series. Like,
Yeah. I do wonder if Druckmann has told Maslin, whatever his name is,
mm,
maybe where things are going, and maybe they're mapping some stuff out together.
well, it would not surprise me if we get Blasters Part 3 is announced and Old Mate's part of the writing team. Like Craig
Yeah.
Mazin is actually part of it. That would not shock me at all. But like you just said, I wonder if they're going to use season 4 as a tease
Mm.
for Part 3,
Yep. Yep.
and that concerns me because obviously the show is like it's tempered stuff like quite a bit. Like it's
Mm.
so how are you gonna translate show to game now?
Yep.
Because game is lore, TV show is TV show.
Yep.
You know what I mean? Like the changes that
I
they've
do.
made. How do we anyway? But that's, or maybe I'm just full of shit. Maybe I got no idea. So
We're gonna find out.
we will find out in 38. So
Oh. Yep.
all right, cool. Thank you for listening to this week's episode, or this episode of the WellPlayed VHS podcast. Let us know in the comments if you're watching it on YouTube what you thought of Last of Us Season 2. Let us know if you've just played the game and you've just watched the show. Let us know that too, because clearly we have not, especially myself. Other than that, you can check out the video episode here on YouTube, which is wellplayed_AU or something like that. Just type in WellPlayed and you'll find it. WellPlayed VHS. It'll come up, and then we're on all the socials. Links will be in the description on YouTube. But yeah, just search up WellPlayed and you'll find the little till logo on your socials and follow us and enjoy more of this WellPlayed VHS. James,
That's it. Zach.
lovely. All right,
Good
catch you next time.
Goodbye.